this short video, I am going to review how to conduct a successful peer review. So first off, I recommend that you familiarize yourself with the grading rubric. This is the rubric that will be used for all the essays, and this is the rubric that I will use to evaluate your work. So this semester, we're focusing on the 3 criteria that are outlined in the rubric. First, you want to have a strong focus in your writing. You want to have clear development, and you also want to make sure that your essay includes clarity. So first off, with focus, the way to accomplish this and meet most of this criteria is to have a clear and strong thesis statement. And in your thesis statement, you should be making an argument that responds to the question that you're being asked to respond to. Your thesis statement should help you remain focused. So all your examples that you provide in your discussion should all somehow tie back to your thesis statement. And then your thesis statement helps you stay organized. In regards to development, you want to make sure that the reasons you provide for the argument all connect back to that argument or to your thesis statement. Include examples from personal experiences and or observations, and make sure that you're clear in your examples when you're describing these experiences that they're your experiences or their observations that you have made. When you are including examples from the assigned sources that you have, that you clearly state that those examples are coming from the assigned sources. So use the advice that's given in the They Say, I Say chapters to help you include summaries and direct quotes, and format those summaries and direct quotes using the models that are provided in the They Say, I Say textbook. And then also make sure that in your explanation of these examples that you connect them back to your argument. That means that you would clearly explain why those examples are important and how those examples show that your thesis statement is true. And then finally, clarity. Make sure that you use signal phrases or attributive tags to give credit to your sources. And that's why chapters 2 and 3 in the They Say, I Say textbook are important, because they provide signal phrases for you to use when you're writing your own essay. And then, does the writing generally follow conventions of paragraphing, sentence boundaries, punctuation, and spelling? So paragraphing is important. From here on out, you should be aware that an essay has multiple paragraphs, so an essay will not be one long paragraph. And then try your best to incorporate sentence boundaries, punctuation, and spelling. Something that I've noticed is that students are tending not to capitalize after a sentence ends. So I recommend that when you are editing your work, make note of when a sentence ends, when you have a period or a question mark. The next letter should be capitalized. That's very basic punctuation, but I see that some writers are getting lazy with that. For this first peer review, you are focusing on this first criteria, the area of focus. And so if you'll notice, the questions that you're answering for your partner are these 3. You're responding to the question, how does the essay make an argument to answer the question? And for that first question, you can just say the writer provides a thesis statement that states, and then you can just restate the thesis statement. And that way you're describing how the essay is making an answer to the question. Then describe how the essay stays focused. So for example, you can summarize very briefly what each paragraph is about and point out how that paragraph connects back to the main idea or the thesis statement. And then if there's any paragraphs that you see that get off topic, that don't connect back to the thesis statement, be sure to point that out to the writer. And then finally, talk about how does the writer make sure that each paragraph is focused on one idea. So in each paragraph, do you see the writer being focused on the idea that they're discussing? And how does the writer make sure they do that? Does the example that they provide show what point that they're trying to make? Do they explain how that example shows importance and connects back to the argument that they're trying to make? So just explain how that writer is making sure that they're focusing on one idea. Okay, so briefly I will show you a sample introduction. So I won't go through the entire essay, but I'm just going to read this first paragraph to you and show you how I would answer that first question. How does the essay make an argument to answer the question? So in this sample paper, this is what the first paragraph states. Recently, I have been indulged with the pleasure of being able to learn about the various views that many writers, talkers have on how technology has had an enormous impact on either them, their family, or society as a whole. Many of these views are against technology, with all of them having one thing in common. When talking about technology's impacts, they all end up talking about the lack of real human life interactions. But in this essay, I will be going over various points that show how lack of communication isn't what we should be most concerned about. Instead, we should be frightened about how much technology is becoming more and more time-consuming. So if I'm conducting a peer review on this essay, and I answer the question, how does the essay make an argument to answer the question? I would say the essay opens up by talking about technology in general, but in the last sentence, I see that the writer is saying that they're going to make the argument that technology is becoming more and more time-consuming. So I can tell that that is the focus of that essay. The last sentence of this paragraph shows a clear thesis, specifically that last part of that sentence, how much technology is becoming more and more time-consuming. So once I read the entire essay, most of the body paragraphs should be discussing how technology is becoming more and more time-consuming. So when I go on to answer the second question, how does the essay stay focused, I am going to be describing how each body paragraph is concerned with supporting the idea that technology is becoming more and more time-consuming. That's what I would be looking for as I continue reading this essay. Something quick that I want to point out, and when I graded this essay, I talked about how, to the writer, I told the writer that they had strong ideas, but they tended to be a little bit wordy, meaning they had really long sentences, unnecessarily long sentences. And I also talked about how they should be using the spelling and grammar check feature in Word, because that helps eliminate some mistakes. Not all of them, unfortunately, but Word is decent in the spelling and grammar check that they have. So whenever you see these two double blue lines, that means that the grammar check on Word is detecting an area that should be looked at, that should be reviewed. So you might need to make a change, you might not. So if I were to go up to File and do not File. If I were to go to the Review, and I do the spelling and grammar, I should see how Word is showing me the suggestions for the grammar mistakes. So for example here, after impacts, I have two blue lines because it's telling me that there's some kind of grammar mistake. And then Word is suggesting that I include a comma after impacts, and actually that's correct. So, and then real life, it's telling me it should be hyphenated, that's correct. And then after essay, it's suggesting that I include a comma, and that's correct. So I suggest you use the technology that you have in order to help you make improvements. So that's all I have for now in regards to peer review. So that's how I would answer that first question. That's how I would review the paper. Let me know if you have any specific questions as you start reviewing your partner's draft.